Hi everybody. I will show my presentation. I'm talking about the garden city Jan Verhaegen. It's the Tuinwijk Jan Verhaegen. It's the green spot, the yellow spot in the red area. The red area is Flora, a neighborhood in Merelbeke, and it's near Ghent, the third city of Belgium. And in that spot in the garden city, the Cool Towns project is also measuring every summer, and so we will show what we did there. The basis was the green exploring plan or groen belevingsplan Flora. What we did was analyze an area, the whole neighborhood, the normal things like the green that is nowadays there, but also more other stuff that is imported in the neighborhood, like noise pollution, year of construction of buildings and neighborhoods and streets. So we got a vision and an image of the neighborhood, and we came to 8 typologies, which is one is the garden city Jan Verhaegen. There were 3 like this in the neighborhood of Flora. We also analyzed 6 parts of the neighborhood, so we divided into 6 parts that are a little bit different. And in each part we looked what is there today. Now, then we created a vision. Where are the quick wins in every typology? So we see here in the garden city some quick wins, and we come to it later. But also for every part that we had, we noticed the opportunities, and we did recommendations. We linked all the parts together in one vision that you see here. And we also did recommendations for the construct, that it was a little bit similar in every part and in the whole neighborhood. And these are some things we like to integrate in the neighborhood, step by step, of course. Last but not least, we integrated street art in it. And we want to do it also step by step. Then we have the garden city of Jan Verhaegen, and this is the vision or the street view in 2013. This is the central area, not really attractive, and this is the plan, how it was. So indeed not really attractive, but a lot of space, and a lot of space that was created for the car. We looked at the occupancy of parking spots, and there was a lot of space, so we didn't need all that space for the cars. So we had several options, from a whole green ring to a little only the central spot. We did on that central spot, we did for 1 week a simulation, for 1 weekend a simulation, September 2016, with the neighborhood. And we also presented our plans, and we also let the people participate to create it themselves, which are the strengths and weaknesses. We did activities with children, you see on the photo, and also the people organize things themselves. I would give it as a hint that you really have to you have to know people that live there and do something with them, not them and we, but do it together as a municipality and the people. We did also a survey for the people who couldn't make it to the presentation in the weekend, and so everybody was aware of the plans. We had 4 alternatives, and 1 made it. The most conservative, but it was due to a strong population of older people that were more conservative, but there was a big difference with the younger people in the neighborhood. And so we had a final or a proposition. So with a central spot and also a spot at the other side of the garden city. We were chosen in 2 calls to as a laureate, and we got money to make it, yeah, not for the whole construct, but a part. Then in May 2017, we gave feedback, and we closed again the central spot. People made together a bench and things like that. It was really cool. And we announced that we would make a temporary playground. That area in green, you see here how it was in 2013, and this is 2017. It's temporary. If you look good, you notice that the street is still there. So if something went wrong, we could take it away. But it was positive, and February we got positive feedback, and in February 2018 we did the final proposition to the neighborhood. They were cool with it. They were enthusiastic, and we started with the construct in November 2019, and in the beginning of 2020 the area was rebuilt. You see one sad thing, it's maybe a too big word, but it's the cars there. It was like a compromise with the neighborhood that there would be less cars, of course, in the central area, but the people who hadn't placed there in the central space could place their car in. I'm not really glad with it now, but it's it's a compromise. But the rest of the construct, we get very good feedback, and nowadays it looks like this. Also, the toys were integrated in the playground, and it's not always sunny in Merelbeke. Sometimes it rains, but the water can infiltrate here in the wadi. One last thing, my personal favorite are the horizontal curbstones. They were reused, and why? This is an angle to use that is necessary to firefighters, to the fire trucks. It could hold a fire truck, but it won't be used as a parking spot. Instead of this thing with the concrete tiles that will be used, but things like this, they won't be used. So it's also the water can infiltrate there, so it's a win-win. Thanks for your attention. Are there questions?
Thanks very much, Jan, for the moment. Please, if you will, stay with us for a bit longer so we can hear from the other cases, the other inspirational good practices first, and then we'll collect a few questions at the end. Thanks very much for this. Very inspiring. I'd like to take a look someday. So who knows when. For now, I would like to invite 2 speakers from the Cool Towns Consortium. The first one is Mr. Pycke, who is a research and development manager with Sioen Industries, and he specializes in design and development of technical textiles. And the other is Howard Gray. He's with Green Blue Urban, based in the UK. And he will tell us more, no doubt, about what Green Blue Urban is about, if the name doesn't tell you so immediately. And he is all about training and educating people, and also supporting constructors on the ground for installing solutions to plant trees in places where they normally wouldn't go and grow. As I said, both are Cool Towns partners, and they will take us on a small tour of some other good practice pilot interventions that Cool Towns is taking across Europe. Before we hear from Howard, he would like you to share your thoughts with us. And we have another little poll ready. And we would like to hear from you in response, whether or not you think that there is enough resource available to help understand and mitigate the effects of heat stress by means of using green infrastructures such as tree planting. So is there enough resource in all the qualities that you need, that you think is necessary, or is there more needed? Do you think it's absolutely available, it's hardly available, or not at all? Again, if you don't see the poll for some reason, you could answer in the chat function and we can take your response on board. Ling, do we have a first intermediate result? 20 more seconds, and then I will ask Howard to get started. Or Howard, would you like to get started and hear the results later on? How would you like to do this? Could you please switch on your microphone?
As we've received very, very mixed results from our own survey. So can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you.
Excellent. Well, that is fascinating. That is really fascinating. That most of our local authorities, most of our local authority areas, there's hardly the means to help understand and mitigate these effects. And I guess that's a kind of problem that runs right across our global society. That there's so many claims on finance, on means, that it's moved down the list. And I thought it's very interesting what Dr. Back said earlier on, that it's this problem of prioritisation and silos in our different areas. Let me just share this screen. What we find is that the whole idea of a green infrastructure scheme is because it embraces so many different disciplines, it's very hard for people to truly understand it. So at Green Blue Urban, we seek to be enablers, to enable resilient cities, towns and cities, through this use of green and blue infrastructure, joining it together, making small incremental changes, maybe close to source as far as we can, rather than trying to do a big scheme all at once. What we find is our older towns and cities, actually many of them are blessed with fantastic tree canopies, which give us a really great quality of life in these areas, but many of them are coming to the end of their life. So how can we move forward? Well, we're really, really proud to be involved with Cool Towns and with the partners that we're working with, because we believe this is really opening eyes right across industries as to what can be done. One of the things, of course, that's concerning us is these extreme weather events. And we, as a company, we've been going nearly 30 years. We've seen a massive change in our weather events, even in our short company lifetime. And the extrapolation of this, of course, is really concerning to us, because we are on a flywheel that's not going to stop anytime soon. And we need to, particularly when we're thinking about using natural solutions, we need to front load these solutions so they'll still be effective, in fact, more effective in 20 years' time. We can't just plant a tree today and hope that it's going to deal with tomorrow's problems. If we plant trees and green infrastructure properly, then we find in 20 years' time it's becoming really mature. It's bringing us massive benefits. And we see these problems as not only heat stress, but then we see these other climate issues, such as these increased weather events. And this is actually a town in Wales. We're working with the local authority there to see if we can mitigate against these incredibly damaging floods. One of the things that's worrying us, though, is these UK summers could be 5 degrees warmer in only 50 years' time. And we're already seeing this last 3 summers, we've seen fantastic summers for those that like the sun, but actually fatal summers for those that don't. And nature itself gives us an idea of how we need to think about dealing with these summer events. What we find is that nature is very good at understanding what can be achieved. This isn't green infrastructure, this is actually electricity generating wind turbine, but it's providing this shade. Now, one of the things that we find is that when we look into these great cities, great towns, we find canopy cover can make a massive difference. And now that's not just canopy cover, that's not just shade, but it's also trees actually evapotranspire water. Water taken up through the tree, actually through the vascular system, and then actually pumped out through the leaves in forms of water vapor, which then brings down temperatures. A bit like the water misting outlets we have in certain areas where temperatures are brought down by this idea of misting water, but trees do it naturally, and they can do it with polluted stormwater. As it goes through the tree's system, it actually cleans it. And it's really interesting that this is being taken up right across the world. In Medellin, in Colombia, they've planted these over 8,000 trees and hundreds of thousands of plants in these main routes into the city to bring down the temperature. Now they're bringing down this average summer temperature by 2 to 3 degrees just by planting. What they say is they're growing a cooler city. I think that's really interesting because this is something that's being taken on by what wouldn't be thought of as a first world country, but recognising the advantages of healthy and green infrastructure. Now, London, of course, is blessed with a major tree canopies. London's 8 million trees are worth over 6 billion to the capital. Now, that is ecosystem services, as has been spoken about earlier on. That's not just heat. That is a lot of that stormwater retention, that may be air pollution, and that may be all the other biodiverse benefits. But it's really important that we value these infrastructure. We see some of our trees in our cities are not actually bringing us any value at all. In fact, some of them are liabilities. Now, these trees here, these trees here, really hadn't been thought about. And so this area, which should have been a nice canopied, cool area, is far from it. And even when the trees do get going, sometimes we have them as liabilities. Great trees, great city, but it's causing us all sorts of problems because we haven't considered the needs of the trees and the way it grows. So at Green Blue Urban, we look at every element that a tree needs to really be successful, whether it's actually looking after the soil, so that's making sure that there's got some soil management, make sure the soil doesn't get compacted through soil cells. We've got root management that actually directs the roots where we want them. We have aeration to keep the soil alive. We have irrigation, and we have above ground protection in terms of tree grills and guards. Now, we've been working on one of the pilot cases here in Breda, where we've actually putting the tree pit together. Now, the storm water has the availability to go into this, so when it rains, it can flood into the tree pit. And actually, the soil mix means that up to 20% of that soil volume can be retained water, which the tree then can draw out of that when the weather conditions are right. There doesn't seem to be any limit to the amount of water that a tree can draw if there's water available and the climatic conditions are okay. Another scheme we're working on is the one in Southend that's already been mentioned. We're actually putting trees all the way down this street to actually deal with this, to bring this cooling effect right into where we actually need it. We worked with a job in Bristol. This wasn't a Cool Towns project, but where we planted small trees in big volumes, and they've turned out to be amazing trees, giving amazing canopies. I was there last year in the summer, and we just saw people just sitting out there under the shade of the tree because it was a most pleasant place to be. Another one is St. Peter's Square in Manchester. There again, huge trees giving us this amazing cooling effect. What they say is a mature street tree can give us the cooling effect of 10 room-sized air conditioning units without that energy factor, and actually continually year on year growing, becoming more effective. And this was one in Glasgow, which isn't exactly known for its heat island effect a lot of the time, but this is the city actually invested in planting trees down the middle of what was a very vehicle-dominated street. Now, these trees take some of the rainwater off the paving, off the hard paving, and they actually give a separation. So it's there partly for climate control, but it's also for providing a separation to make people feel safe cycling, safe walking, and safe sitting. One of the projects we have worked on is in Newmarket, where we were part of a school project where they actually planted a sustainable drainage tree pit system in front of the school to actually help draw pupils in to what's happening, to understand the way that water comes off the school and it can be actually diverted into the tree pit. That tree takes that up. One very interesting scheme we did was in Yorkshire, where they actually extended a road width by an extra lane. They had no drainage. So they actually did a joint up 6 trees, all joined up in a tree pit. The water simply now runs off the road through this tree pit, down through a bioremediation soil, and then actually infiltrates into the ground below. These trees have seen phenomenal growth, and we did testing on the actual sap flow. So we're measuring the volume of water that's being taken up by these trees. And it is estimated from the testing that we did, we could be getting 4 litres of an hour for taken out of per tree up out of the ground and actually transpired. So this is doing more than just holding water. This is actually actively cooling the towns and cities. And finally, just like to mention Grangetown in Wales, which was a great scheme in Cardiff, where they actually disconnected all the surface water sewers actually from the street, from the housing, and they replaced them with these rain gardens with tree pits in. So they're ticking all the boxes. They're looking at sustainable drainage, they're looking at heat mitigation, they're looking at biodiversity and amenity value. And what it has done has been amazing benefit for those that live, work and travel through these areas, as completely revitalizing what was a pretty intensely engineered environment with a very green one. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Howard, for this very comprehensive overview of where and how trees can liven up and improve the quality and the resilience of places. Benny, maybe you could come in and complement from Benny Pycke from Sioen, complement these examples with the ones that we are dealing with in cool towns related to other types of interventions.
Yeah, thank you, Taco. I assume you can see my slides?
I can.
Yeah, okay, thanks. So just like Howard, thanks Howard for the introduction. We are the second business partner collaborating in cool towns with a number of municipalities, organizations and universities. And also in the next couple of minutes, I'd like to show you some highlights and some of the initiatives that we started in the scope of cool towns. Maybe first I'd like to illustrate what Sioen is. So we are a global technical textile producer and a textile solution provider. We have 3 divisions focused on coated technical textiles, but also protective apparel and chemicals, which basically colorants for many day-to-day products. And as we're a global company, we have a revenue of about €500 million a year. We participate to cool towns with 3 engineered solutions, which basically are a toolkit for municipalities and regions to cool down their local sites. And those 3 product types are shade sails for shading the horizontal surfaces, facade membranes, which are open membranes that you can attach to a building facade to both cool the outside environment as well as drastically reduce the energy need for cooling a building. And a third, which is a spin-off of those facade membranes, which is a technical complex that we have developed to facilitate installing living walls. And that'll actually permit both passive cooling of the facade as well as active cooling of the surrounding environment. And those living walls can be implemented both outdoors and indoors. For Sioen, we had a number of focal points in cool towns because when we participate to a project, we want to expand our knowledge base and then disseminate that information because we are a textile manufacturer. So we wanted to do some research to show really the data, why you would want to have green or other technical solutions in the city. We wanted to demonstrate a true number of pilots, what types of interventions are possible today, but also innovate together with those local municipalities and partners to show how we can introduce new technologies to get green or textile solutions where otherwise you would not get them. And then finally, it's very important that we disseminate everything that we've learned, but also just the topic of heat stress by inspiring both the youngsters as well as other people through some of our activities. Now, when we propose our solutions, well, it's very important for us to know that they're worry-free and that they have low to no maintenance. And that case is, for example, very true for the living wall, which allows you to install green where typically no green is possible. And you know that in a city, there's a lot of vertical space that's typically unused, and the horizontal space, so the normal space, is very busy. And through living walls, you can actually green and cool the city. And here, through the research that we've done in Cool Towns, we actually showed that right next to the living wall at our headquarters in Ardooien, we were able to cool this environment during the day by 5 degrees. And Howard just showed that that's about the temperature difference that you have today in cities due to both climate change, but also compared to rural areas. So you can cool substantially the urban environment. In a second campaign in our research, we've done another type of research, and we've used both thermal imaging as again the weather stations by monitoring the heat stress index next to our living wall, also next to a concrete wall. And then as a control site, we use one far from the wall. And we already showed that compared to a conventional wall, you can have up to 5 degrees difference. But what actually happens with true living walls is that during the day, you can actually completely negate the heating effect of a wall in an environment. And you will see that in the results on the right-hand side, that it's as if the wall isn't there when you have a green wall. And for the next campaign, we will do the same research, but throughout the day, but also the evening and the night, because the concrete wall will then irradiate infrared heat that we expect to be drastically lower than with our living wall system compared to a conventional wall. The next phase in Cool Towns, of course, was to demonstrate through a couple of pilots. And there we are working together with a public school in Zelzate through the partnership with the province of East Flanders, where we will install a 50 square meter living wall at the public school. And for that, we are pre-growing a number of living wall panels at one of our partners in Belgium. But what you see at the bottom of the green wall, you see this light green stretch, and that is actually to have this interaction with the student activities. And the students will actually use that area of the living wall to start vertically garden at the school. So there's a educative element to having that green wall. And also there's a link to the cafeteria of the school, where they can grow herbs and certain plants that they can then use in cooking classes at the school. So it's a very educational experience, as well as part of a bigger project to green the school and make it more climate adaptive. Then with our partner Middelburg, we will update an existing bus stop and driver rest area by coating it with our textiles and actually having a greener driver rest area. Typically waiting for a bus is not a fun event, but we estimate that if you can cool it by adding that living wall element, it's both more a better rest area for the drivers, but also a more pleasant environment for the passengers to wait for the next bus. And it's part also of a larger scope, because Middelburg is drastically changing the Kanaalweg into a much greener and more pleasant environment for people. Another aspect of Cool Towns, like I said, was innovating. Typically, it's very hard to get green at a city site. And for that, we've developed with a local solution provider called Abribo, for the province of Oost-Vlaanderen, as well as the municipality of Merelbeke, a solution where you can have an above ground water storage to feed a living wall, but that's also interconnected with a bike stand. So there you really have the interfacing of cooling the environment, having a rest area, having a living wall, also having a green roof on top of an electric sustainability parking site. So there's really all these things coming together at the site at Merelbeke. And a spin-off of that idea, we are installing at Oostende, which is also a Cool Towns partner. There we are using the bench idea together with the living wall to really create a a fun site for youngsters to hang out. And in that bench, they will also be able to charge their phones while they rest in the cool environment next to City Hall in the site. And like you see, the water storage is above ground. Here you won't be able to capture the water that falls on top of the green wall and the roof, but you will have a much lower need for water supplementing as you would have with normal flower planters that they typically used in the city streets. And then the final aspect for us was the dissemination, which is very important. We wanted to include students, and particularly those involved in product design, to really reflect on what the issue of heat stress is. And for that, we've started a collaboration with the University of Applied Sciences in West Flanders, and particularly the Industrial Design School. And we have a group of about 60 students now identifying a number of situations in the public area and really think about the issue and try to come up with new solutions with our textile products to help target populations at specific scenarios in the city, to create these refugee sites in the city where people can really escape the heat through engineered solutions. And here I really wanted to show you in what direction some of the students are thinking. Even we were surprised about the creative talent of these youngsters. And some are really thinking about a light and shade game to cool, but also make more attractive the alleys in the city. Also to have shading on the town squares and have like a light game between lighted area and shaded area on the town squares. But also the public areas such as parks, which you think are already green, they want to cool them with innovative designs where they use textiles to create shade and also having them be dynamic so the people can change them as they want. And others are also thinking about the art aspect and combining art with green walls, or combining printed facade textiles to cool the wall, but then also combining it with a water fountain. So there's a lot of great ideas coming out of this interaction and this collaboration with the school. And for that, I wanted to conclude my overview of some of the highlights. If you have some questions, feel free to get in touch. And thanks again for the opportunity to show some of the things that we're doing.
Thanks very much, Benny, and Howard as well, for this overview of the various heat-reducing interventions. Stick around for a few more minutes, please, until we've heard from the other speakers, and then we can maybe involve you in the questions and answer session. Next up, I would like to introduce Ms. Tanne Schreuder from the city of The Hague in the Netherlands, which coincidentally is my hometown, so it's a double pleasure for me to say welcome. Tanne works with the climate adaptation team of the city of The Hague, and one of the many projects that she's dealing with is the urban water buffer, which is being created as part of Nature Smart Cities. Please tell us more, Tanne.
Thank you, Taco, for the introduction. Thank you for all my fellow speakers for the lovely presentations, and for everybody watching from home. Glad to have you here, and hope we can keep your concentration for another half hour or more. Let me see. I will share my presentation. There we go. Okay, so today I'd like to take the time to tell you about the urban water buffer, which is a new innovative system that we have been integrating into an existing project in which we are transforming the Cromvliet Square into the Cromvlietpark. So here I have a number of before situations. In The Hague, we are focusing for the next few years on something that we call verdichten, verduurzamen en vergroenen, translated to compressing or condensing the city, making the city more sustainable and greening the city. Well, if we look at this square, we can see that there's quite a big area of space, but that it has not been optimally used. So there was a project to update the square, and we thought the urban water buffer would be a great addition to this for a number of reasons. Mainly here you can see that this area has a lot of heat stress, and we would really like a park to be a place where people can cool down, be outside in the summer in the hot time, and be a nice place to be. Here you can see that while it's not necessarily warmer, it's not necessarily cooler, so it could be definitely be optimized. Similarly, as we have heard before, one of the other problems of climate change is heavy rainfall and the damage that it causes. And here you can see within the square as well that that is the case within this area. So overall, we can see that this area is within the neighborhood lack, and the quality of life and the quality of public spaces is not up to par. So that also further shows the reason for this project. Now, before that, I'm going to show you the design that we came up with. I would like to talk to you about participation. This was a very important aspect to us. It was important that it was a park for the people, that they had have the ability to put input into it. So they were very involved in the design process. We sat with citizens as well as school children, and also in the realization process, searching out small local businesses to see what they could do in the process of realizing this project. And this was all done via the Coalitie LAC, which is a residency panel. And together we came up with the following design. This is the Cromvlietpark, The Hague. As you can see, or at least I think, it looks like a much more attractive place to be than the before pictures that we had. And you can also see that the urban water buffer is actually hidden. So what is the urban water buffer? Well, the urban water buffer is a circular water system that purifies water and stores it locally so that it can be used at a later point in time. So when it rains, the rainwater is stored in a crate system where it is held temporarily. After this, it flows through to a biofilter where the water is cleaned and purified. The clean water is then pumped into the deep underground where it is stored. When it's hot during the summer, the water can be pumped back up and it can be used to irrigate the park as well as the petting zoo and the local farm, the small allotment gardens and that sort of stuff. There we go. So the urban water buffer is in essence a sponge. It retains water when there is heavy rainfall, and when it's dry and hot, we have the ability to squeeze that sponge and to use that water when necessary. So all in all, the retention system, it's a 70 cubic square water storage system which holds the water, and the treatment aspect contains a 30 square meter biofilter to clean the water, and the aquiferic storage is 35,000 cubic meters of storage in the deep underground. And also, one of the great things is that we were able to disconnect surface area, but we also, in cooperation with local housing associations, were able to disconnect 1,000 square meters of roof. So these were detached from the sewer system. So that not only means that we make the park work as well as we can for the area, but we also relieve some of the tension on the system of The Hague as a whole. And of course, a great green park with 250,000 square meters, including green surfaces, trees, an allotment garden, an urban farm, playground, really a place for people to come outside and to enjoy nature in a comfortable way. So here you can see a picture from a while back. I think this was taken in April or May with our council member, because we have been well on our way to realizing this project. Here we have some more pictures. These are from the last few months, because I'm happy to say that in October, we have finalized the urban water buffer itself. The final touches are now being laid on the park, which will be opened in spring. So what does the urban water buffer bring to the park and to the neighborhood and to the city of The Hague? Well, firstly, of course, there's a lot of things to do with climate adaptation. So we have a provision of local fresh water that we can use, which reduces heat stress and reduces the risk of drought. Through being able to capture this water, there's less risk of flooding, which also means less possible damage to surrounding buildings. And it has really been a learning opportunity for us. It's quite an innovative project, and there's a lot to go on with it in the sense of maintenance and monitoring. So it's really been a great learning moment. And we also really hope to improve the quality of life and quality of the public spaces for the people in this area. Social, it was a big social project. There was a lot of focus laid on really involving everybody. And even after the project is completed, there will be space to keep educating people about the urban water buffer and to also tell them what they can do at home to make sure that they add to our climate adaptive solutions that we're trying to implement. And of course, there's a good social return as well through the collaboration with local businesses. And we are very happy to receive additional funding through the Climate Kick project, which will help with developing the monitoring plan. So here we see that the red line is how we were originally doing on all these benefits. And then we have the green line and what we could possibly add with the green infrastructure. But similarly, we have another green line that shows that we're hoping that this urban water buffer will really maximize what we can bring in the local area. So more awareness, more social cohesion. We hope that by offering this beautiful park, we will inspire people to go out, maybe go for a jog, and just have a higher quality of life and a better place to live. So that was all for me. Hopefully the COVID restrictions will change sometime soon. And if you're ever in The Hague, we would like to welcome you to our park. You have my email address there. I'll be happy to show you around. And if you have any questions, you can contact me as well. Thank you.
Thanks very much for this, Tanne. It's very beautiful, sunny as well. So I think there will be a lot of follow-up to your invitation in the days and weeks to come, I could imagine. Please stick around as well. We may have a few questions for you in a few minutes. But before we do that, I would like to invite Matthew Ling from City of Cambridge to join us and tell us a bit more about the Cambridge Canopy project, which he leads as part of the Nature Smart Cities project to improve resilience through increasing tree coverage. Matt, are you there?
Hello, yeah, I'm just trying to get my slides. Can you see them?
I can, yes.
Is that in just presentation mode?
It's not yet.
Somehow, there we go. The webinar function was blocking it. Right, okay, thank you everyone. Great presentation so far. Thank you to my co-presenters and to the hosts. So my name is Matthew Ling and I'm the project lead for the Cambridge Canopy project at Cambridge City Council. In this session, I'm going to give you an introduction to the Cambridge Canopy project. So you might be thinking, well, what exactly is the Cambridge Canopy project? So technically speaking, it's the Cambridge City Council's Green Infrastructure Investment Pilot under Work Package 3 of the Interreg 2Cs programme, Nature Smart Cities Across the 2 Cs. Well, all of that was a bit of a mouthful, and you might still be thinking, so what does it actually do? So simply put, the Cambridge Canopy project is all about trees, specifically planting more of them and giving better protection to the ones that we already have. And as with the other pilots being implemented through the Nature Smart Cities project, the reason for doing this is to make Cambridge more climate resilient, helping the city to adapt to the likely impacts that will be brought about by climate change and contribute to mitigating or lessening its effects. We're using trees as a green infrastructure solution to achieve this climate resilience. So in other words, finding natural solutions in place of more traditional built or engineered options for helping us to tackle the climate emergency. And all of this is obviously very important because, as many leading figures and organisations have widely communicated, climate change is the greatest threat to life as we know it. Extreme events, phenomena and impacts linked to the effects of climate change are increasingly being recorded right across the world. And these will impact all of us in many and differing ways, regardless of where we live. And this will be of particular importance in urban settings. The UN project that the global population will be 9.7 billion people in 2050. It is also estimated that nearly 70% of the global population will live in urban areas. That is 6.79 billion people in towns and cities across the world. There is, therefore, a huge emphasis to make on our towns and cities and their climate resilience, and then being as prepared for a 2050 climate scenario as possible. And that's what the Cambridge Canopy project sets out to do, to make the city more climate resilient. The Cambridge Canopy project is an urban forestry initiative, the main aim of which is to grow our urban forest by 2%. But before we delve into that in more depth, first, what is urban forestry? Unlike the image here, urban forestry does not mean building trees or tree-like structures. In fact, urban forestry is an approach of managing trees in urban environments. It requires that all trees in a town or city are seen and managed as one continuous single population. By considering all the trees in Cambridge as a single unit, regardless of who owns them, we can seek to maximise the social, environmental and economic benefits they provide. By considering the cumulative benefits supplied by the entire tree population across towns and cities in this way, it is possible to measure and manage the impact on and influences of our trees on processes such as climate change. So let's take a look at Cambridge's urban forest. The current tree canopy cover of Cambridge's urban forest extends to 17% of the total area of the city. It is made up of more than 330,000 individual trees and shrubs exceeding 1.2 metres in height. Of these trees, by far the greatest majority are privately owned. More than 74% of the city's trees are privately owned. That is nearly 250,000 individual trees residing in residential gardens, college grounds, or on other institutional land. And this is perhaps not surprising, given that 77% of the city is made up of privately owned land. And the greatest single land use in Cambridge is residential land, covering a total of 39% of the city. As briefly touched upon earlier, the headline aim of the Cambridge Canopy project is to grow tree canopy cover in the city by 2%, from 17% which it's at currently to 19%. To achieve this, modelling suggests we need to plant an additional 16,000 trees across the city. Through the Cambridge Canopy project, Cambridge City Council will be planting 2,000 nursery-raised standard-sized trees across streets and open spaces in the city. Whilst our 2% target might sound modest, in real terms, this will mean an additional 82 hectares of the city being covered by tree canopy. Or to help you visualise that, that's equivalent to about 120 football pitches covered by trees. In addition to the 2,000 trees we will be planting on public open spaces, we will also give away 1,500 half-standard sized trees through resident engagement schemes, such as the popular Free Trees for Babies scheme, which Cambridge City Council has been running for the past 20 years. But this still means we need to find a further 12,500 trees to hit our magic 16,000 tree target to help us realise that 2% canopy cover increase. And for this, we're working hard to engage with the city residents and other landowners to encourage the planting of trees on private land. And we've been working hard to get this message out through as many different channels and different methods as possible. And we've had articles published in local newspapers, on Facebook groups, and through radio stations, and through professional organisations and institutes. Our communication and outreach centres on raising awareness of the huge range of benefits that can be realised from having more trees and more canopy cover in our urban forest, and from it being more resilient and healthier. And this doesn't just extend to the climate benefits that trees provide. Trees really are like the superheroes of the natural world. Their presence and being exposed to them has been found to have measurable benefits on us in numerous ways. Here are just a few of those ways, including the reduction of stress, aiding post-surgical recovery, and reducing the rates of violent crime in our cities. but they also clean our air, protect us from noise pollution, provide us with building materials and food, and can lessen the effects of severe weather events. And these benefits are realised by everyone. The urban forestry concept sees us manage a city's trees as one population, regardless of ownership. And this same approach means that the benefits that are provided by every individual tree in our collective urban forest are realised by all residents, users, and visitors to our city alike. Even without consciously knowing it, everyone benefits from the services provided by the trees in our urban forest. Unlocking the potential of residential land in the city is key to the Cambridge Canopy project. The front and back gardens of the city are like green oases. They already provide homes to hundreds of thousands of trees and shrubs, and they form the spine of our urban forest. But they also offer the greatest potential for growing our urban forest further. As we noted earlier, 39% of the total land area of Cambridge is residential. And breaking this down a bit further, we find that there are more than 54,000 individual residences in Cambridge. And it's estimated that more than 45,000 of these have at least a front or a back garden. So, if each one of these properties with a garden planted a single new tree, we would have 45,000 new trees, increasing the total tree population of the city by more than 13%. So it's through this urban forestry approach and using the principles of manage more, plant more, protect more, and engage more that the Cambridge Canopy project seeks to make the city more climate resilient. The urban forest, by its nature, is a multi-stakeholder asset which provides benefits to all residents and users of Cambridge, with or without consciously knowing it. Through fostering the message that climate change is the challenge that will affect us all, and that each one of us has a role to play and a care of duty to execute in tackling it, we hope to raise awareness of and buy into the virtues of a healthy and robust urban forest. With this raised awareness and buy-in, it's possible to see that by working together and collectively pulling towards a common goal, our contributions can add up to make a difference locally and beyond. Our small individual actions to be more climate conscious when brought together and considered and counted for as one can achieve considerable impact. By each planting one new tree in our gardens, for example, and helping to grow our urban forest, in turn, this contributes to wider tree planting and tree cover targets, helping to increase our national level contributions to combating climate change, and showing us how our contributions really do scale up to contribute to achieving global level impact. I want to say thank you very much for listening now. And for any more information on the project, please feel free to visit the project website, the details of which you can see on the screen, or follow us on our Twitter account. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Matt, for sharing this with us and showing us how we can green the place one tree at a time if we all step in and contribute. We're almost out of time, but there are a few more minutes available for sharing a few questions with the speakers. Matt, if you could switch off your screen sharing, please. We can have all the speakers of the last session in view. Thanks very much. Picking up on some of the elements that you presented in several of your presentations, and so also connecting them to some of the questions that we've seen in the Q&A. There were several references made to the importance of every individual and residents being involved. Matt made the point, Tanne was very clear about the fact that in The Hague, actually, this participation with the district, with the neighborhood, is essential in making the effort succeed. And Jan van Damme as well. I was wondering, if you are engaging your citizens so actively, as Jan has shown us, as Tanne has shown us, do you also see a movement where these people then gradually become co-owners, not only of the place, but of the whole challenge that the place is dealing with? In other words, will they take charge of maintenance or be caretakers? And will they also start changing their behaviors in their own properties? Maybe I can start with Jan. You've done a lot with the local district in Merelbeke. did this also spill over into their private properties, for instance? Are these people now more climate-minded?
Yes, partially the people who were already convinced, they are convinced more to do something for their own neighborhood and to create some great place for their children. The people who aren't convinced are sometimes, yeah, I noticed a little bit more enthusiasm, but it's difficult to get also that kind of people.
Tanne, is that something that you experience as well in The Hague, particularly knowing the city myself? You're in a quite challenging neighborhood, I can imagine, in terms of participation.
Yeah, good question. It is, of course, what we hope. It's what we aspire, and we also hope to inspire through this project. So I guess it'll be a bit of a case of time will tell. We really hope that is the case. There were several things that were already part of the square, such as the allotment gardens, and those will be retained as well. And there were lots of people who were very excited to know whether or not the cow, which was there previously, would also come back. So we're hoping at least that this enthusiasm for nature will also grow into something more, and we will see.
Right, so you lead by example as a local authority, and hopefully it will spill over into your community in the way that Matt has demonstrated us how it works in Cambridge, right, with your Trees for Babies program and so forth. Another aspect that also keeps popping up, and it's more directly perhaps related to the tree as a solution, because we've been hearing different types of solutions. There are so many different species, and they grow so slowly. Maybe Matt and then Howard, what can you tell us about selecting the right tree? Does it matter? Are there certain trees that are better at capturing climate effects, at reducing heat, at retaining water, at withstanding our evolving climate? How do you see that?
Thank you. Yeah, for sure. There's a lot of work. It's an art. It's my colleagues take all of the credit for this. I think the tree officers in the tree team at the City Council, they rely upon their knowledge and their technical know-how to review the space that's available for the trees, and the concept of the right tree in the right place is applied. So, you know, there's a tree for every available option, and that is a fine balance of, do you want a huge, great big tree that will provide more shade? Or do you want a tall, slender tree that's going to fit into a narrow street scheme? So yeah, there's absolutely a fine balancing act there. Bigger trees with great big canopies with large leaves are going to create a huge amount of shade, and they're going to be better in parks or really big plazas or town squares, for example. But that's not going to be right for every location. I'm sure Howard can expand further on that.
Howard, anything to add?
Oh, thank you, Matt. Totally agree. Really, we have to look at, when we're choosing a tree species, as to what we are looking to actually achieve from doing so. So you might have a tree that's very good in terms of heat stress, like Matt has referred to, big leaves, but then we get the highway guys who say those leaves block up our drains, so that they are looking for something else. So we often have to come to a compromise between what we are actually trying to achieve and what the parameters or limitations are. Also bearing in mind that if we're looking for things like water retention, holding back, attenuating our stormwaters, it's good to have something that's evergreen. It's always worth bringing in some sort of 12-month of the year tree that gives us something all the year round. Just be aware though, if we're talking about water attenuation in trees, we need to think about trees that are can tolerate salts. This is, we do see salt damage to trees, not only through the roots, but actually salt on the canopy on some trees. So yeah, fully agree. Right tree, right place, for the right reasons, in the right way.
Thanks very much, Matt and Howard. Maybe a final quick question to also bridge the different disciplines that we have on the table. Tanne's project, of course, is very integrated in the sense that it has a social dimension, it has a greening dimension, an engineering dimension. I was wondering, maybe Benny, also from you as a research and development pioneer, if you like, with your work on textiles and materials, do you see an increased role for these, let's say, artificial man-made materials in mitigating climate effects, or should we stick mainly to trees and all that nature offers us?
No, well, I think there's definitely an opportunity to use different tools in different environments. And I'm sure that from Cool Towns also, some of the lessons learned will be exactly that decision tool where certain man-made solutions are more prone, more preferable in some situations, but sometimes you can have a tree with the tree pit. So I think it'll definitely depend on the local situation. And I'm sure that engineering companies and all the partners are willing to share the information that we've collected to find a proper solution for the people attending the seminar.
Thanks very much, Benny. There's so much more to talk about from my end, but also if I look at the different questions that have been asked, unfortunately for now our time is up. So I would like to thank you as panelists very much for sharing your examples with us and your thoughts. And I'm afraid it's time to wrap up this webinar. I would like to thank all participants very much for joining us, for sticking with us, and for interacting with us. And with us, I mainly mean the speakers. So thanks very much for your participation. I would also like to thank very much our speakers who've enlightened us a lot on a range of subjects, from methods to measuring heat stress and then turning this knowledge into actions and mitigating the effects of heat, to helping cities decide where to put which intervention to adapt to climate change, and knowing what the obstacles and barriers and drivers for that are. So I hope that it has been informative for all of you. Thank you, speakers. I have to say thank you, of course, to the Interreg 2Cs program of the European Union, because it's the institution that makes these two projects and also therefore this webinar possible. A big thank you to our production team, Ling, Esther. Behind the scenes, you probably haven't seen them, but they were the ones making everything work on the technical side of things. So thanks very much for that. My colleague Luc, who was the moderator of the Q&A. Thank you very much for your support. And it's time to say goodbye. I can tell you that Cool Towns and Nature Smart Cities are not done yet, so we will continue to work on our research, on our solutions, and on demonstrating that we can have a positive impact on climate adaptation in cities. I invite you to follow our projects. We will be in touch after this webinar with more information about our work and our resources, so you can easily follow that up. This will include a link to this webinar, so you can look back the sessions that were your favorites or that you missed for some reason or the other. And we hope to see you again in person at some point in time, a bit later in the future, when we have a next meeting, an event where we can hopefully share more results of these projects with you. So thanks very much. Before we really say goodbye and log out, I would ask everybody to switch on their cameras, if this is technically possible. I'm asking Ling. All participants, if you're still here with us, switch on your cameras so we can have a quick look at who is here, and we may be able to wave goodbye to you. I'm checking if this is possible. It seems not to be the case. Thank you very much, everybody. This concludes our session. I say goodbye on behalf of all speakers, and I hope to meet you again at some place, at some time soon.